We always hear this phrase, burn the boats, like it's a badass rally cry. But what does it actually mean when it's your boats? I've been thinking about the times that I've done it and the times that I didn't. So I'm going to ask myself some questions and answer as honestly as I can. Here we go. When was the first time I actually burned the boats? Like, made a decision I couldn't undo? I think that the one that stands out the most is probably when I shifted into the fitness industry and I handed in a resignation to my former employer because, I could have gone back, but the intent to leave was already set in place. It's kind of like when you are trying to quit a bad habit. If you tell a lot of people that you're going to quit a bad habit, it's hard to go back on that. But if you don't tell people that you're going to quit a bad habit, it's pretty easy to keep doing the bad habit. And I think that's a super, super important, not only in pursuing goals to tell people what you're going to do and mean it and own it, but also to ensure that you tell people what you're going to do when that thing means a lot to you, whether it be to your health or your quality of life, etc. What was a safer path I didn't take, and why did I walk away from it? Oftentimes, that safer path, the thing is like a sense of familiarity, a sense of security, a sense of safety. And the best way that I like to reframe it is reminding myself or reminding others that all these things that we deem to be secure or safe are kind of like made up. It's sort of like within our comfort zone. As an example, a lot of people would consider maybe like a grocery clerk or a grocery store worker because it's an essential service. They would consider that to be very stable. But what we're noticing is a lot of people are using self checkouts. There's a lot of things that have shifted. There's probably less employees in a grocery store than there would have been 10 years ago. There's a lot of things that are different, and we can't control that. That's out of our control. We might be able to work for a store that still hires more employees, but will that store survive? We don't know. And so that's where it's an illusion as to what is a safe path, what is not, what is stable, what is not, because it all kind of comes down to what are you most invested in and what are you most aware of. So for the fitness industry, I'm very aware of it because I can see where the services need to adapt and change, where the problems adapt and change. Like in the past, a person may have been wondering how to do an exercise, and now they're wondering, like, what's the point? Like, why would I do this exercise? And perhaps they need like some insight into like the long-term effects of not strength training, and hopefully getting a person on track before those long-term effects compound for better or for worse. Now, what was the scariest part of that decision? And did I ever think I made a huge mistake? This is, I believe, situational and based on an individual. So a lot of people make a big risk, they'll make a big bold move, and they'll reconsider what they've done and they'll go back to what they did before. And I respect that and I support that. But for me, I think just I am not happy when I'm not doing something that gives me a strong sense of purpose, where I don't feel a sense of ownership in what I do. And so for me, I don't necessarily go back to where I came from, but I'll definitely learn the lessons from what I just finished. So I might learn lessons around boundaries. I might learn lessons around time management. I might learn lessons around expectations, or I might learn lessons around like taking feedback. But I generally don't backpedal to reverse course. I might pivot again and again and again and again, but I like to keep moving forward. And I think that that might be unique to me. There's probably a lot of people that gravitate towards my stuff that can relate to that, but that tends to be the key element of my decision-making process. And how did burning the boats change how I showed up for myself, for others, for the work? It made me so much more present with the people in my life, where in the past I would kind of feel like I owed a lot to other people, in terms of like deliverables. Like when you're working the 9 to 5, you think, well, I cannot go to this thing because I work from 9 to 5. And if I work from 9 to 5, I cannot just be free during that middle of the day time. And now when I am pretty much completely self-employed, if there is something important at 2 p.m., I'm going to be at that thing at 2 p.m. And I will also show respect to anybody I might have had a training session scheduled with or a meeting scheduled with, and I will ensure that any of my deliverables that need to be done are done. But it kind of shifts how you see the world. You kind of have more of a sense of urgency into we only have one chance to do certain things, and you no longer make the same excuses that you might have made before you burned the boats, as it were. And what happened when I didn't burn the boats? When I left the back door open. Usually it relates to my growth, stagnation. I feel stale. I don't get where I need to be. And in terms of like fitness, nutrition, when you don't burn the boats, you tend to hang on to that thing that's holding you back. So for some people, it could be hanging on to the high calorie coffee that you have in the morning, where you know that it's like 300 calories and you know that there's a way to make it like 80 calories or maybe just go with black coffee, et cetera, but you're refusing to because it's comfortable. And if you had to change, that would mean you would never go back. And so a lot of people will plateau in their progress because it's like they know that if they increase their movement, they would have noticeable change. If they went from 3,000 steps a day to 7,000 steps a day, it would change their lifestyle, change a lot of outcomes, especially if they sustained it. But if they had to do that, something in their schedule would change. So they leave the back door open to always be able to backpedal and be like, oh, I didn't have time today. I'll get that done on Thursday. Thursday comes along, they don't do it then either. That's what it looks like to leave the back door open when you were meant to burn the boats. So am I the kind of person who needs to burn the boats in order to grow? Or can I handle the discomfort of staying? This is a good question because I think there are certain seasons of life where staying is one of the most important things you could do. And that correlates greatly with like life experience. It correlates greatly with lessons, with grit, with resilience. The people that we know who have achieved great things wouldn't have achieved those great things if they hadn't stayed. And there's going to be certain things in our life that we stay with very long term. And with regards to that, I like family and friends, those value systems are very strong with me. So like if there was ever anything where I didn't disagree on with somebody close to me, I would find ways to still work with them because they're family or their chosen family, etc. For me personally, I don't burn the boats when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I don't look at it as discomfort as much as just like character building moments, like times to learn how to communicate better, times to learn how to listen, times to learn how to hold space, times to learn how to be patient, because we need certain things in our life in order to sustain the growth. There's a lot of people who will just burn all the bridges, and that is not sustainable. So there's certainly some nuance to all of these concepts, but what I would find is that if you surveyed a big pool of people, a lot of people would probably be happier if they kind of made it so that they could only move forward and they couldn't go backward. Now, what would I tell someone else who's standing at that cliff thinking about jumping but terrified of what they lose? I have historically tended to be an influence on people changing their job. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it does not. They're always making this decision on their own free will, but they're usually inspired by the stage of my life that they see now. And what I would say is you still individually have to want that outcome that you're thinking about. Like if you want to be a trainer, if you want to be self-employed, or if you want to have more time for family and friends, you do have to really want that for yourself more than I want it for you. Because a lot of people will see that I have something and they'll think that if I want it more than they do, they can still make it happen because I made it happen. But they have to want to make it happen more than I ever wanted to make it happen, or else you're not going to survive the ups and downs. Because there's going to be lots of times when your back is up against the wall and you kind of have to figure things out and you have to get creative and you have to put your ego aside. And that's not easy for people because some people want to get things faster. They want things to be easier. They want things to be free of friction. And that's not really how this stuff kind of works. So what I would say is be sure that you want that outcome in a way that will make you tolerate more. Be sure that you want it more than anybody else does, not for the sake of being obnoxious and overly intense, but simply for the sake of being understanding of the fact that it will take whatever it takes until it takes. And that's something that one of my friends says quite often. Shout out to them. Now, if I'm being honest, am I holding on to any boats right now that I need to let go of? This, for me, this is timely. This is why I'm doing this episode. I learned so much in life, and many times in my life, I've had to find a good moment to step away from something that used to be a responsibility of mine, but to do it in the most respectful and loving way that I can, and to make sure that I don't burn any bridges. Even when I felt that I should burn bridges, it's not my first instinct, even if that requires me to be more patient. I'll give you an example. Like, I worked retail. It was my last day of retail, and they kept calling me in for more different tasks, more different assignments. There was nothing, I wasn't responsible for these things. It wasn't part of the agreement that I had to stay and commit all these extra tasks, but I did it anyway so that nobody could ever say anything bad about me. Not to say that they wouldn't, not to say that they would, but at least I would have acted in a way that would assure that any reasonable person wouldn't have anything bad to say about me based on my actions. And if somebody did, it would likely be based on their own internal experience, and there's nothing I can do about that. But I like to do damage control as much as I can, and I like to leave rooms better than I found them as often as I can within realistic parameters. Sometimes you just have a bad experience and you need to get out. And then sometimes it's just simply a matter of being a little bit more patient during those last moments to just make sure that everything is calm, to make sure that everybody's left in a state of neutrality, not anger, not resentment. And then you can get home and unwind and go through your processes. If you have your own anger, if you have your own resentment, you just try to find an outlet for that, like fitness or journaling or reflection or long walks or fitness. I said fitness twice. It's pretty on brand for me. So then finally, the outro that I'm going to talk about here is that sometimes we don't need another tip or tactic. We just need to stop giving ourselves an escape route. Burn the boats doesn't mean being reckless. It means being real about what's worth fighting for. And sometimes the only way forward is through the fire. So I hope that you take a few more risks. I hope you burn the boats.